Some of history's greatest stories were never written down. They linger just beyond our understanding, waiting for someone to listen. Join us as we uncover the world's most enigmatic puzzles in this whispered journey through ancient mysteries. By the end, you will see the past not as a set of dry facts, but as a collection of incredible, unsolved riddles. We will explore a lost city swallowed by the sea and a desert canvas of giant, unexplainable drawings. Which ancient secret do you think holds the most startling truth? For over 2,000 years, a single story has captivated explorers and dreamers. The philosopher Plato first wrote of a powerful island empire called Atlantis, a marvel of engineering and culture that vanished beneath the waves in a single day and night of misfortune. He described it as a place of immense wealth and advanced knowledge, a civilization that fell out of favor with the gods and was swallowed by the sea as punishment. But was this a true historical account or merely a cautionary tale about the dangers of pride? The search for its possible location has become one of history's greatest treasure hunts, spanning from the Mediterranean Sea to the distant Caribbean. Some researchers point to the island of Santorini, where a cataclysmic volcanic eruption around the year 1600 BCE decimated the sophisticated Minoan civilization. The scale of that disaster, with tsunamis and ash clouds, mirrors the destruction Plato described. Others look to the mud flats of southern Spain, searching for remnants of a sunken city, or to the Azores in the Atlantic, believing the island chain could be the mountain peaks of the lost continent. Then there are the more speculative theories, placing the fabled city near the Bahamas or even Antarctica, fueled by interpretations of ancient maps and unexplained underwater formations. Regardless of its physical reality, the cultural impact of Atlantis is undeniable. It has become the archetype for every lost world, a symbol of a golden age and a stark warning about the fragility of human achievement. It asks us a profound question. What if a society could reach the peak of its power only to have every trace of it erased from the earth? This legend endures because it taps into our deepest fears and our greatest sense of wonder, a ghost of a civilization that continues to call to us from the depths. While the ocean may have swallowed one mystery, a desert on the other side of the world holds another, etched into the very earth itself. High on the arid plains of southern Peru, the Nazca Desert presents a canvas of staggering scale. Here, an immense network of lines and figures, known as the Nazca Lines, stretches across nearly 250 square miles. These are not small carvings. They are geoglyphs, massive designs created by removing the dark, sun-baked surface stones to reveal the lighter-colored sand beneath. From the ground, the landscape appears as a confusing jumble of pathways, but from the air, the true genius and mystery of these creations unfolds. You see giant, perfectly proportioned animals, a hummingbird with a long, slender beak, a spider with one leg gracefully extended, a condor with wings outstretched. There is a monkey with a spiraling tail, a whale, and even a figure that looks eerily like an astronaut, a humanoid form seeming to wave from a hillside. The sheer size of these drawings is difficult to comprehend. Some of the straight lines run for miles, flawlessly straight across the rough terrain. The question that has baffled researchers for decades is simple yet profound. Why would a people create such enormous art they could never see in its entirety? Theories about their purpose are as varied as the figures themselves. One prominent idea suggests the lines formed a giant astronomical calendar, with certain lines pointing to the sun, moon, and stars at key points in the year, helping the Nazca people track seasons for planting and harvest. Others propose a more spiritual function, that these pathways were ceremonial walkways used in rituals to communicate with deities, perhaps to plead for life-giving water in an unforgiving climate. The act of walking the lines may have been a form of prayer or pilgrimage. Some more speculative theories point to ancient advanced technology or even extraterrestrial influence, given the need for an aerial perspective to appreciate the work. Yet the most compelling explanations remain grounded in the world of the Nazca themselves. Perhaps the lines were part of a complex water cult, with the shapes representing animals and spirits associated with fertility and rain. The geoglyphs could have been a desperate and beautiful message to the gods, a permanent plea etched into the land itself. The preservation of these lines for over 2,000 years is itself a minor miracle. The desert climate is key. The region experiences almost no rain, and the wind is calmed by a unique protective layer. The sun heats the dark surface stones, causing the air just above them to rise, which forms a cushion that deflects the stronger winds that would otherwise erase the delicate designs. Their discovery as coherent images is a relatively recent chapter in history. While people on the ground had always known of the lines, their full forms remained a secret until the 1930s, when commercial airplanes began flying over the desert. Pilots were the first to report seeing these incredible figures from their cockpits, revealing a gallery of giants that had been hiding in plain sight for centuries. This fact only deepens the enigma. How did the Nazca, without the ability to fly, plan and execute such precise and massive artworks? The lines stand as a silent, sprawling monument to a culture's ingenuity, a puzzle written on the earth that challenges our understanding of the past. From the vast, sun-baked canvas of the Nazca Desert, we turn the page to a mystery contained within a single, strange book. Locked away in a Yale University library, the Voynich Manuscript is perhaps the most stubbornly unreadable text in the world. Its pages are filled with a script that no one has ever deciphered, flowing in a language that matches no known system on Earth. Alongside this unknown text are hundreds of intricate illustrations, but they offer little clarity. You see plants that seem to twist in impossible ways, with leaves and roots that belong to no known botany. There are diagrams of celestial charts featuring unfamiliar constellations and intricate drawings of tiny, naked women bathing in a system of green, interconnected pipes. The entire book feels like a glimpse into a different reality, a biology and cosmology from a dream. Its known history begins in the 17th century, when it was purchased by a Bohemian alchemist named Georg Bersch. He was as baffled by it as we are today. It later came into the possession of the book dealer Wilfrid Voynich, from whom it gets its name, and its trail eventually leads all the way to the Holy Roman Emperor Rudolph II, who supposedly bought it for 600 gold ducats, believing it to be the work of the brilliant 13th century friar Roger Bacon. For centuries, the world's top cryptographers and linguists have tried to crack its code, from intelligence experts who broke Japanese codes in World War II to modern computer scientists. They have all failed. The text possesses a statistical structure that resembles a real language, with patterns of words and letters that are not random, yet it defies every attempt at translation. This has led some to a controversial conclusion. Could the entire book be an elaborate, meaningless hoax? Perhaps a clever forger created a nonsense book centuries ago to sell to a wealthy, gullible patron. Yet, modern analysis of the ink and parchment confirms it is genuinely medieval, dating to the early 15th century. The amount of painstaking effort required to create such a long and complex work of pure gibberish seems immense. So we are left with the central, haunting question: who went to such incredible lengths to write a book that no one was ever meant to read, and what lost knowledge, if any, do its beautiful, bizarre pages hold? Across the English countryside, a circle of towering stones stands as a silent testament to a forgotten purpose. Stonehenge is a masterpiece of megalithic construction, a project of almost unimaginable scale for a society that had not yet invented the wheel. The largest of its stones, the Sarsens, weigh up to 50 tons each and were dragged over land from quarries 20 miles away. But the smaller blue stones tell an even more incredible story. These distinctive spotted rocks were transported from the Preseli Hills in Wales, a journey of nearly 150 miles. How did Neolithic people move 80 giant stones across such a vast and rugged distance? Some believe they were dragged on sledges and rollers, a monumental effort requiring the coordinated labor of hundreds of people over many generations. Others suggest they were moved part of the way by water, floated on rafts along the Welsh coast and up rivers. The very act of their transportation is a mystery as profound as the monument itself, a clear declaration that this place was of supreme importance. Once on site, the work was far from over. The giant sarcens were shaped using stone hammers, then raised into position. The most impressive feat of engineering are the lintel stones, which were carefully placed on top of the uprights and locked together with complex joints, a technique more familiar to woodworking than stone. This was not a haphazard pile of rocks. It was a precision-built structure meant to last for millennia, but for what the most enduring theory points to the heavens. The entire monument is perfectly aligned with the movements of the sun. On the summer solstice, the longest day of the year, the sun rises directly over the heel stone, and its first rays shine into the very heart of the stone circle. In winter, the sun sets between the gaps of the largest trilithons. This has led many to see Stonehenge as a colossal astronomical observatory, a stone calendar that marked the passing seasons and allowed its builders to predict celestial events. Yet another compelling idea suggests it was a place of healing. The magical properties attributed to the blue stones, brought from a distant, sacred landscape, may have drawn pilgrims from across Britain seeking cures, turning the site into a Neolithic hospital. The mystery only deepens when we look beyond the famous circle. Recent ground-penetrating radar and surveys have revealed that Stonehenge was not alone. The surrounding landscape is littered with the remains of other wooden and stone structures, burial mounds, and processional pathways. There is evidence of a vast circular ditch and bank, known as the Durrington Walls, just 2 miles away, which may have been a village for the builders or a site for great feasts. These discoveries paint a picture of a vast, integrated ritual landscape, a domain of the dead and the divine, with Stonehenge as its powerful central cathedral. So was it a temple, a clock, a hospital, or a cemetery? Perhaps it was all of these things at different times or all at once. Its true purpose remains locked within the stones, a secret kept for over 4,000 years. While the stones of Stonehenge charted the heavens from the ground, another ancient civilization was building a portable cosmos inside a wooden box. Recovered from a Roman-era shipwreck off the Greek island of Antikythera, the corroded bronze lumps seemed like unremarkable junk at first. But upon closer inspection, researchers realized they were holding the shattered remains of a device of staggering complexity, a clockwork universe forged over 2,000 years ago. This is the Antikythera Mechanism, an ancient Greek analog computer. Through painstaking analysis, scientists have determined it was a hand-cranked device containing at least 30 interlocking bronze gears, all precisely cut by hand and housed in a case the size of a shoebox. As the user turned the handle, a series of dials and pointers would move, predicting the movements of the sun and moon, the phases of the lunar month, and the positions of known planets. It could even forecast eclipses and track the cycle of the ancient Olympic Games. The intricacy of its design is breathtaking. One gear with 223 teeth perfectly models the subtle wobble in the moon's orbit, a cycle that takes 18 years to complete. This was not a simple teaching tool. It was a precise, mechanical representation of the known cosmos, a product of a scientific mind that understood the universe as a system of predictable mathematical laws. The existence of such a device shatters our assumptions about ancient technological capability. Who could have possessed the knowledge to design and build it? The leading theory points to the legendary inventor Archimedes or his school of followers in Syracuse, as ancient texts describe him creating a complex planetarium. Others suggest the Rhodian astronomer Hipparchus, whose theories on the moon's motion are directly encoded in the gearwork. The mechanism stands as a lonely survivor, a single data point hinting at a whole lost world of sophisticated mechanical knowledge. Its discovery forces us to ask a haunting question. How much advanced science and technology from the ancient world has simply vanished, lost to the deep sea or the dust of time? This one fragile artifact suggests that our timeline of human innovation may be missing entire chapters, leaving us to wonder what other marvels were built, used, and then forgotten, their secrets waiting silently in the dark. Rising from the edge of the Sahara, the Great Pyramids of Giza are monuments of such staggering precision that they defy simple explanation. We all know their iconic silhouettes, but the true mystery lies in the details of their creation. The Great Pyramid of Khufu, built from over 2 million stone blocks, each weighing several tons, was originally encased in a layer of smooth, white limestone. These casing stones were cut with such accuracy that the gaps between them were less than 1/50th of an inch, a fit tighter than many modern machine shops can achieve. The base of the pyramid is almost a perfect square, with its sides aligned almost exactly to the 4 cardinal directions: north, south, east, and west. The margin of error is astoundingly small, less than 1/15th of a degree. How did ancient builders achieve this level of geometric perfection without modern tools or even the compass? Inside the Great Pyramid, the puzzles only multiply. Deep within the stone heart of the structure, 2 narrow shafts, each no wider than a dinner plate, climb from the king's chamber towards the outside world. For years, their purpose was a complete enigma. Were they air vents or perhaps part of a religious function designed for the king's soul to ascend to the stars? In the 1990s, a robotic camera was sent up one of the shafts, navigating its tight, angular course only to find a small limestone door with 2 corroded copper handles. This door, too, was eventually drilled through, revealing not a hidden treasure chamber, but another, smaller door beyond it. These shafts were clearly of immense importance, yet their ultimate secret remains sealed behind stone. This meticulous, almost obsessive attention to detail extends to the very reason the pyramids were built in this specific location. A compelling, though controversial, idea known as the Orion correlation theory suggests the 3 main pyramids at Giza are not randomly placed. Instead, they form a perfect mirror on the ground of the 3 stars that make up Orion's belt in the night sky. Furthermore, the Nile River itself may symbolically represent the Milky Way in this grand cosmic map. If true, this would mean the entire Giza Plateau was designed as a massive terrestrial replica of the heavens, a permanent home for the pharaoh's spirit among the imperishable stars. The final, enduring question is one of human effort. Who actually built these colossal structures? The old notion of armies of slaves whipped into construction is largely dismissed by modern archaeology. Evidence from worker graves found near the pyramids suggests a highly organized, rotating workforce of skilled Egyptian laborers who were well-fed and received medical care. They were likely farmers who worked on the pyramids during the annual inundation of the Nile when their fields were underwater, but the logistics are still mind-boggling. How did they transport and lift these multi-ton stones into place? Ramps were almost certainly used, but the design of these ramps, whether they were straight, zigzagging, or spiraling up the pyramid's face, remains one of history's great engineering debates. The pyramids stand not as tombs of a cruel tyrant, but as a testament to a unified and brilliantly organized society. A civilization that could marshal its entire people to achieve a single, sacred goal that would echo through the millennia. Far out in the vast expanse of the Pacific Ocean, a silent, stone-faced army stands guard over an island of ghosts. The Moai of Easter Island are some of the most recognizable yet misunderstood monuments on Earth. Nearly 1,000 of these colossal statues dot the landscape, their stern gazes fixed inland, forever watching over the descendants of the people who carved them. The scale of their creation is staggering. The average moai stands about 13 feet tall and weighs a crushing 14 tons, but the largest one ever erected, named Paro, towered over 30 feet and weighed a staggering 82 tons. And then there is the one that was never finished, still lying in its volcanic quarry. If completed, it would have been nearly 70 feet tall and weighed an almost unimaginable 270 tons. How did a society with no metal tools, no wheels, and no large animals to provide draft power achieve such a feat? The answer begins in the volcanic crater of Roanoke. This was the statue factory of the island, a sacred mountain where generations of master carvers worked. Using hand-held stone picks called toki, they would carefully chip away at the soft volcanic tuff, first freeing the front of the statue from the rock face, then painstakingly undercutting it until it slid down onto a prepared bed. The moai were not just heads. Almost all of them have full torsos, which were often buried over centuries by soil and debris, hiding their complete forms. Once free of the quarry, the real challenge began. How do you move an 80-ton block of stone for miles across rugged, hilly terrain? For a long time, the dominant theory was that the Rapa Nui people used a system of log rollers and ropes, dragging the statues on their backs in a slow, grueling procession. But a more compelling idea has emerged, one passed down through local oral tradition. The statues were made to walk. In this theory, teams of workers would use ropes to rock the moai from side to side, edging it forward with each tilt, essentially making the giant statue walk itself across the landscape. Experimental archaeology has shown this method is not only possible but remarkably efficient, requiring far fewer people than dragging. Imagine the sight and sound of a giant stone figure swaying rhythmically down a path, a testament to human ingenuity and coordinated effort. Once at its final platform, called an ahu, the moai had to be erected. This was the most dangerous part of the process. Using a carefully constructed stone ramp and a system of levers and ropes, the workers would painstakingly raise the statue inch by inch until it stood upright on the ahu. Only then was the final act of creation completed. The empty eye sockets were fitted with white coral eyes with deep red scoria pupils, an act that was believed to bring the statue or its spiritual essence to life. These were not just monuments, they were revered ancestors, vessels for divine power known as mana. The ahu platforms were sacred burial sites, and the moai acted as intermediaries between the world of the living and the world of the spirits, watching over the clan and ensuring its prosperity. This explains the immense investment of time and resources, but this very drive for spiritual prestige may have sown the seeds of collapse. The island was once a subtropical paradise covered in a thick forest of giant palm trees. To move the statues, to build sledges and rollers, and to provide for a growing population, the trees were cut down at an unsustainable rate. As the forest disappeared, the soil eroded. Birds that once nested there vanished. The islanders could no longer build the seagoing canoes needed to fish in deep waters. Society began to fracture. The statue cult crumbled as resources vanished. The walking of the giants ceased. In a haunting echo of this collapse, the moai were toppled one by one, often by rival clans in a period of civil strife. The very ancestors they believed would protect them were cast face down, their coral eyes shattered. The story of Easter Island is a powerful and sobering mystery, not about how the statues were made, but about why the making of them ultimately led to a society's undoing. It is a timeless lesson etched in stone, a warning about the delicate balance between ambition and the resources of our own isolated world. There is a place on the map where fact and legend converge into a single, unnerving question mark. In the western North Atlantic Ocean, a triangular zone connecting the points of Miami, Bermuda, and Puerto Rico has become infamous as the Bermuda Triangle. For decades, this area has been the star of a terrifying narrative, one where ships and airplanes vanish without a trace, swallowed by an unknown, malevolent force. The legend truly ignited in the public imagination with the mysterious disappearance of Flight 19 in December of 1945. A squadron of 5 United States Navy Avenger torpedo bombers took off on a routine training mission from Fort Lauderdale and simply never returned. A rescue plane with a crew of 13 was sent to find them, and it too disappeared. No wreckage from any of the 6 aircraft was ever found, leading to official reports that cited causes unknown and fueling endless speculation. This single event, combined with other high-profile cases like the vanishing of the commercial cargo ship SS Marine Sulphur Queen in 1963, cemented the Triangle's reputation as a place of profound danger. The stories are compelling, a chilling catalogue of vessels found adrift with no crew, of pilots reporting strange instrument readings before their radios fell silent forever. But what is truly happening in these waters? The scientific community offers explanations that are, in their own way, just as fascinating as the myths. One of the most compelling theories involves methane hydrates. Deep on the ocean floor, vast reservoirs of this natural gas can become trapped in a solid, ice-like form. If a landslide or a shift in pressure suddenly releases this methane, it can erupt upwards in an enormous bubble plume. When this bubble reaches the surface, it drastically reduces the density of the water. A ship sailing over such a plume would lose its buoyancy instantly and sink without warning. In the air, a large methane release could theoretically disrupt the atmosphere, causing engine failure or even altering the air density enough to make flight impossible. Then there is the simple, ever-present factor of human error compounded by the region's uniquely challenging environment. The Bermuda Triangle is one of only 2 places on Earth where a true magnetic compass points to true north rather than magnetic north, a discrepancy that can lead to catastrophic navigation mistakes if not properly accounted for. The area is also notorious for its sudden, violent local storms known as microbursts, and for the powerful, unpredictable currents of the Gulf Stream, which can swiftly erase all evidence of a disaster. Statistically, however, the area is not significantly more dangerous than any other similarly trafficked part of the ocean. The high number of incidents can be attributed to the sheer volume of air and sea traffic that passes through it. The mystery, then, is not one of physics but of psychology. Why does this particular patch of sea hold such a powerful grip on our collective imagination? It taps into a primal fear of the unknown, of the deep and the vast sky, and the unsettling idea that there are still places in our modern, mapped world where things can simply cease to exist. The Bermuda Triangle is a modern myth born from genuine tragedy, a story we tell ourselves about the lingering frontiers of our understanding, a dark space on the chart where our rational minds and our deepest fears continue to wage a silent war. Deep within the shadowy backrooms of museums and private collections, another kind of artifact whispers of a lost world. The crystal skulls are hauntingly beautiful objects carved from a single block of clear or milky quartz, their features smooth and enigmatic. For over a century, they were promoted as relics of an ancient Mesoamerican past, perhaps from the Maya or Aztec civilizations, said to possess mystical powers of clairvoyance and healing. The most famous of these, the Mitchell-Hedges skull, was accompanied by a romantic tale of discovery, supposedly found beneath a collapsed altar in a Mayan city in Belize by the adventurer F. A. Mitchell-Hedges' adopted daughter, Anna, in the 1920s. Its perfect craftsmanship, with a separate, movable jawbone carved from the same piece of crystal, was presented as proof that no modern tool could have created it. This narrative captivated the public, suggesting these objects were the work of a sophisticated, unknown technology. They became icons of alternative archaeology, featured prominently in lore and most famously in films like Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, where they were linked to extraterrestrial beings and cosmic power. But the truth behind their origins is a detective story that reveals more about our own desires than about the ancient world. By the late 20th century, scientific scrutiny began to dismantle the mystery. Researchers from institutions like the British Museum and the Smithsonian subjected the skulls to detailed analysis using advanced microscopy. What they found was telling. The surfaces of the skulls showed microscopic markings that could only have been made by high-speed, rotary wheels coated in industrial diamonds, tools that simply did not exist in the pre-Columbian Americas. The quartz itself was traced to sources in Brazil and Madagascar, regions with no known trade links to ancient Mesoamerica. The provenance or ownership history of the skulls also completely fell apart. The Mitchell-Hedges story, for instance, was revealed to be a fabrication, with evidence showing that Anna Mitchell-Hedges likely purchased the skull at a Sotheby's auction in London in 1943. The crystal skulls were not ancient treasures at all. They were almost certainly manufactured in Europe, likely in Germany, during the 19th century, a time of booming fascination with the occult and a ready market for exotic antiquities, real or forged. Yet, even with this overwhelming evidence, a sliver of doubt remains for some. Are all the crystal skulls modern fakes, or could one, somewhere, be a genuine prehistoric artifact? The scientific consensus is a firm no, but the question itself is revealing. The enduring allure of the crystal skulls speaks to a deep human yearning to believe in magical objects, intangible connections to a mysterious and powerful past. They are a perfect modern legend, born from skillful hands in a European workshop, yet forever haunting our imagination as ghostly visitors from a time that never was. A ghost ship drifted silently in the Atlantic, a perfect vessel sailing itself towards oblivion. In December 1872, the British brigantine de Gracia spotted the American merchant ship Mary Celeste under full sail, yet her movements were erratic. After signaling with no response, a boarding party made a chilling discovery. The ship was completely deserted. The crew of 10, along with the captain's wife and 2-year-old daughter, were gone without a trace. The lifeboat was missing, but everything else was eerily intact. A half-year supply of food and water remained in the stores. The personal belongings of the crew were untouched in their quarters. On the captain's desk lay his logbook, the final entry entirely mundane. There was no sign of a struggle, no evidence of violence. It was as if every soul on board had simply evaporated into the sea air. The only clues were a disassembled pump in the hold and about 3 feet of water in the bilge, neither of which explained the abandonment. The ship was still perfectly seaworthy. So what terrifying emergency could have compelled an experienced captain to order his family and crew into a small lifeboat in the middle of the ocean? The theories began almost immediately. The original Admiralty Court suggested piracy or mutiny, but this made little sense. Valuable cargo and the crew's possessions were left behind, and no pirate would abandon a sound ship. Another idea points to a sudden, violent waterspout or a seaquake, a powerful underwater tremor that could have shaken the ship violently, perhaps making the captain believe the vessel was sinking. He might have ordered everyone into the lifeboat as a precaution, only for the tow line to snap, leaving the Mary Celeste to sail on while the lifeboat was lost to the waves. More scientific explanations focus on the cargo. The ship was carrying 1,700 barrels of denatured alcohol. If some of the barrels had leaked, fumes could have built up in the hold. Fearing a catastrophic explosion, the captain may have ordered the hatches opened and everyone to abandon ship temporarily. In this scenario, a sudden gust could have then filled the ship's sails, pulling it away from the struggling people in the lifeboat before they could get back on board. Then there are the more outlandish speculations, from attacks by a giant squid to alien abduction, theories born from the sheer lack of a rational answer. The true fate of the Mary Celeste's crew is one of the sea's most enduring riddles, a stark reminder that the ocean keeps its deepest secrets locked away forever. Another ghost story haunts the early chapters of American history, this one written not on the sea but on a deserted stretch of shoreline. In the late 16th century, a group of over 100 English men, women, and children established a settlement on Roanoke Island, off the coast of what is now North Carolina. Their governor, John White, sailed back to England for desperately needed supplies, but his return was delayed for 3 long years by war and storms. When he finally made it back to the colony in 1590, he found the village completely empty. The houses had been carefully dismantled, and the only clues were 2 cryptic carvings. On a post of the fort's entrance, the word Croatoan was deeply carved, and on a nearby tree, the letters CRO. There was no cross, the prearranged symbol for distress. It was as if the colonists had simply packed up and left a message about where they had gone. But where was Croatoan, and what did the word truly mean? Croatoan was the name of a nearby island, now known as Hatteras Island, and also the name of a group of Native Americans who lived there, a people who had been generally friendly to the English. The most logical theory, and the one Governor White himself believed, was that the colonists facing starvation and hardship had integrated with the Croatoan people. They may have split into smaller groups and been absorbed into different local tribes. For centuries, this has been the dominant explanation, a story of assimilation rather than massacre. Yet, without any definitive proof, the mystery only deepens. Why would an entire colony leave behind their English ways so completely? Where is the archaeological evidence of their integration? Modern searches continue, with archaeologists sifting through soil on Hatteras Island and the mainland. They have found some tantalizing artifacts like a 16th-century English signet ring and pieces of European metalwork mixed with Native American tools and settlements. These finds suggest trade and contact, but not the smoking gun of the lost colony itself. Some researchers now believe the colonists may have tried to move to a different location entirely, perhaps further inland, and were later absorbed by tribes like the Lumbee. The Lumbee people of North Carolina have long held oral traditions and physical features that some believe point to European ancestry, including legends of their ancestors speaking English and building square houses. The word Croatoan, then, might not have been a final destination, but a starting point for a much longer journey of survival. This mystery captivates us because it is the original American vanishing act, the first great puzzle of the nation's colonial past. It represents a fragile thread of what might have been, a different kind of America born from unity rather than conflict. The silence of the abandoned settlement asks us a profound question about identity. How easily can one culture be swallowed by another, leaving only a single cryptic word as a farewell? A different kind of ghost is preserved on a simple piece of ancient linen. The Shroud of Turin is a 14-foot-long cloth that bears the faint, haunting image of a man who appears to have been crucified. The figure is front and back, as if the cloth had been laid over the body and then folded back over the head. The details are eerily specific. You can see wounds on the wrists and feet, what looks like a puncture in the side, and even marks around the head consistent with a crown of thorns. For millions of the faithful, this is not merely an image. It is considered the actual burial shroud of Jesus of Nazareth, a sacred relic that miraculously captured the moment of resurrection. The very fabric seems to hold a divine secret, a silent witness to the central event of Christianity. This profound belief, however, has collided head-on with the cold, hard data of modern science, creating one of history's most intense debates. In the late 1980s, a team of scientists was granted permission to perform radiocarbon dating on small samples of the shroud. This process measures the decay of a radioactive form of carbon in organic material to determine its age. The results, announced in 1988, sent shockwaves around the world. The tests dated the linen to between 1260 and 1390. According to science, the shroud was a medieval creation, not a first-century relic. For many, this was the final word, proof that the shroud was an elaborate forgery. Yet, this was far from the end of the story. Almost immediately, critics of the carbon dating raised serious questions. They argued that the sample taken might have been from a section of the cloth that was expertly rewoven after a fire in the 16th century that damaged the shroud. Could the tested threads have been contaminated by centuries of handling, smoke, and even the oils from the hands of believers, all of which would skew the carbon dating results younger? The controversy over the testing methodology has kept the question of the shroud's age wide open for its defenders. Beyond the carbon dating, other scientific analyses have only deepened the mystery of the image itself. Researchers have spent decades trying to understand how the faint, straw-colored imprint was made. It is not a painting. There are no brushstrokes or pigments that have soaked into the linen fibers. Instead, the image resides only on the very topmost microfibers, as if the threads were superficially scorched. The image has a three-dimensional quality encoded within it. When researchers used a device that translates light and dark shades into physical height, the resulting model was a perfectly proportioned, three-dimensional human form. No known artistic technique from the Middle Ages or even today could achieve such an effect. What natural process could create a perfect, life-like negative image with encoded depth information? Some have proposed that a burst of intense, short-duration radiation, perhaps at the moment of resurrection, caused a chemical change on the cloth's surface. Others suggest a complex interaction between spices, ammonia, and body vapors. Yet no theory has been able to fully and reproducibly explain every characteristic of the enigmatic imprint. So we are left with an impossible object, a relic that science cannot fully explain and cannot definitively dismiss. It stands at the precipice between faith and reason, a tangible focus for belief for some and an unsolvable scientific puzzle for others. The Shroud of Turin asks us not just to question its authenticity, but to consider the very nature of evidence itself. What happens when our deepest beliefs meet our most advanced tools of inquiry, and neither one emerges with a clear and final victory? A simple clay jar could rewrite our understanding of ancient technology. Discovered in the ruins of a 2,000-year-old Mesopotamian village near Baghdad, this unassuming artifact consists of a 5-inch-tall vase of pale yellow clay. Inside it, archaeologists found a carefully rolled copper cylinder, sealed at the bottom with asphalt, and within that, an iron rod suspended perfectly down the center, also held in place by an asphalt plug. When an acidic or alkaline liquid, such as vinegar or grape juice, is poured into the jar, it acts as an electrolyte, creating a chemical reaction between the two different metals. The result is a small but measurable electric current, about 1 volt of electricity. In essence, this object, known as the Baghdad battery, appears to be a primitive galvanic cell, a simple battery. The concept is so straightforward it seems almost impossible, yet the physical evidence is right there. A working model of electrochemical principles from a time before the very concept of electricity was formally understood. So what would a 2,000-year-old civilization need with a battery? One of the most compelling theories points to the art of electroplating. This is the process of using an electric current to coat a common metal, like copper, with a thin layer of a more precious one, like gold. Small, gold-plated artifacts from the same period have been found, and while they were likely gilded using traditional mercury-based methods, the battery offers a fascinating alternative. A skilled artisan could have connected several of these jars together to create a stronger current, dipping a metal object into a gold salt solution and using the electricity to bond the gold to the surface. Imagine a Mesopotamian workshop, not with fire and forge, but with rows of these clay pots, silently generating power to create objects of shimmering beauty. Another, more speculative idea suggests a religious or medicinal application. The gentle tingle of an electric current would have been a truly mysterious sensation, something completely outside the normal human experience. A priest in a dimly lit temple could have used the device to produce a small shock, perhaps to convince followers of his divine connection or to perform what seemed like magical healing. The psychological impact of such an unknown force would have been profound, a tangible demonstration of power from the gods. Yet not everyone is convinced this object was a battery at all. Many mainstream archaeologists remain deeply skeptical. They point out that no wires or conductors were found with the jars, and no historical texts from the region mention anything remotely related to electrical phenomena. The alternative explanation is far more mundane. The jar, they argue, was simply a secure storage container for important religious scrolls. The iron rod and copper cylinder would have been the core, with the precious papyrus or parchment scroll wrapped tightly around them before being sealed inside the clay vessel for protection. The asphalt plugs were just an effective way to keep out moisture and air, preserving the sacred texts within. This is a perfectly logical and widely accepted practice from the period. So we are left with a classic historical dilemma. Is the Baghdad battery a stunning glimpse of lost scientific knowledge, a practical tool whose purpose we have only just rediscovered? Or is it merely a humble storage jar, and we are the ones projecting our modern understanding onto an ancient object, seeing a battery only because we know what one looks like? The jar itself offers no further clues. It sits in silence, a vessel for either revolutionary energy or for simple, forgotten scrolls, its true purpose as enigmatic as the day it was found. A map drawn on gazelle skin in 1513 holds a coastline that should have been impossible to chart. The work of Ottoman admiral and cartographer Piri Reis, this fragment of a larger world map is a stunning artifact of exploration, but its true mystery lies in the bottom of its parchment. There, sketched with surprising detail, is a landmass that bears a striking resemblance to the continent of Antarctica, a continent that would not be officially discovered for another 300 years. Even more baffling is the fact that this southern land is depicted without its thick, miles-deep ice cap, a condition that last existed millions of years ago. How could a 16th-century navigator have known the shape of a land buried under ice for eons? One of the most radical theories suggests that the map is evidence of a prehistoric, advanced civilization, a seafaring culture with technology sophisticated enough to map the entire globe. Proponents of this idea argue that the knowledge of these ancient explorers was passed down through the ages, surviving in fragments in great libraries like the Library of Alexandria, and that Piri Reis had access to these now lost source maps. This would mean our historical timeline is profoundly incomplete, that a great human society rose and fell long before recorded history, leaving only cryptic clues on a handful of surviving documents. A more conventional explanation, however, questions what we are actually seeing on the map. Mainstream scholars point out that the map is a compilation, and Piri Reis himself noted he used 20 different source charts, including maps from ancient Greeks, Portuguese explorers, and even one that he claimed was drawn by Christopher Columbus. Could the mysterious southern coastline simply be a speculative drawing of a hypothetical great southern continent, a common feature on maps of the era? Perhaps it is a distorted, misplotted version of the eastern coast of South America, with a river plate estuary stretched and twisted into the shape of a northern Antarctic peninsula. The map lacks crucial longitudinal coordinates, making such cartographic errors entirely possible. The ink itself offers no easy answers, and the debate endures. The Piri Reis map forces us to confront the fragility of knowledge. It is a ghost of a possibility, a hint that the past may be far stranger and more full of secrets than our history books dare to admit. While other relics speak of faith or forgotten science, one artifact offers a literal treasure map. Among the famous Dead Sea Scrolls discovered in clay jars in desert caves, there was one that stood entirely apart. It was not written on fragile parchment or papyrus. This scroll was made of pure, beaten copper, a metal chosen to endure, and its message was not a sacred text or a philosophical treatise, but a detailed, matter-of-fact inventory of unimaginable wealth. The Copper Scroll, as it became known, lists 64 separate caches of treasure. The quantities are staggering, describing tons of gold and silver, along with precious vessels and aromatics. We are not talking about a few hidden coins. This is a systematic list of a royal fortune, a treasure so vast it seems almost mythical. The language is brutally practical. It describes precise locations, many now lost to time. One entry might instruct you to dig at a specific dam, another in a cave with 2 openings, or under a staircase in a ritual bath. The instructions are cryptic, written for people who already knew the landscape intimately. For decades, scholars have debated its origin. The most compelling theory links this hoard directly to the vast riches of the Second Temple in Jerusalem. Before the Roman legions sacked and burned the city in the year 70, it is believed that priests or rebels smuggled the temple's sacred treasures out of the city to keep them from being plundered. The Copper Scroll could be the official record of that desperate, top-secret operation, a ledger meant to ensure the holy relics could one day be recovered. This theory gives the hunt a profound spiritual dimension. Searchers are not just looking for gold, but for the lost menorahs, trumpets, and sacred vessels central to Jewish worship. So why, with such specific instructions, has no one ever found this treasure? The landscape itself has changed dramatically over 2,000 years. Earthquakes have reshaped the terrain, rivers have changed course, and ancient landmarks have crumbled to dust. A staircase mentioned in the scroll might have been buried under centuries of mud and sand. Furthermore, the measurements given are in ancient units, and their modern equivalents are hotly debated. Dig 40 cubits in one spot, and you might be 20 feet off based on a different interpretation. The treasure hunt has consumed explorers and archaeologists for generations. Some have dedicated their lives to deciphering a single clue, excavating sites throughout the Judean desert, from the ruins of Qumran to the cliffs around Jericho. They have used everything from ground-penetrating radar to old-fashioned shovels following the copper maps trail. Yet every major excavation has come up empty. This relentless failure has led to other, more controversial ideas. Perhaps the treasure was found long ago, maybe by the Romans themselves, and the scroll is merely a ghost of a fortune that no longer exists. Or maybe the scroll is not a literal map at all, but a symbolic or religious text, its descriptions of wealth representing spiritual blessings rather than physical bullion. But the sheer, practical nature of the copper metal argues against that. Someone went to immense trouble and expense to create a permanent, durable record, etching this list into a material meant to last for ages. They believed the treasure was real, and they wanted to make sure it could be found. The Copper Scroll remains the ultimate cold case. It is a promise of glittering reward, a secret whispered on metal, waiting for the right person to understand its ancient directions and finally solve a 2,000-year-old mystery. France holds its own army of silent, stone sentinels. In the village of Karnak, along the windswept coast of Brittany, over 3,000 prehistoric standing stones march across the landscape in dense, parallel rows. This is not a single monument, but a sprawling complex of alignments, the most extensive collection of megaliths in the entire world. The sheer scale is overwhelming. The Menech alignment alone consists of 11 converging rows of nearly 1,100 stones, stretching for more than a kilometer across the countryside. They range from small, knee-high stones to towering giants over 4 meters tall, creating a sense of ordered grandeur that defies simple explanation. Walking among them, you feel a profound sense of mystery, as if you have stumbled into a diagram drawn by giants. What possible purpose could such a massive, coordinated effort have served? The stones seem to whisper of a deep and unified purpose, one that modern science struggles to hear. One of the most compelling theories casts the alignments as a sophisticated astronomical observatory. Certain key stones appear to be aligned with the rising and setting of the sun and moon at significant times of the year, particularly the solstices. The entire complex could have functioned as a colossal calendar, its long stone avenues marking celestial events with a precision that guided the agricultural and ritual cycles of the people who built it. It was a way of reading time from the earth itself, of anchoring their lives to the dependable rhythm of the cosmos. Another, more terrestrial, idea suggests the stones were an early seismic warning system. The region is geologically active, and some researchers propose that the stones were placed on sensitive points in the ground. The theory suggests that subtle tremors or shifts in the water table would cause the massive stones to tilt or shift, providing a visible, widespread alert to impending earthquakes. They would have been a silent stone network of detectors, a practical response to a very real environmental threat. But science is not the only voice that speaks here. Local legend offers a far more colorful origin story. It is said that the entire formation is a Roman legion turned to stone by the wizard Merlin. As the story goes, the soldiers were pursuing the Cornish Saint Cornelius, who was also a pope fleeing to Brittany. Cornered on the coast, the saint turned around and invoked divine power, petrifying the entire army where they stood, forever freezing their marching ranks in granite. This myth, passed down through generations, transforms a field of stones into a captured moment of drama and magic. It gives a name and a story to the incomprehensible, turning an archaeological site into a page from a book of legends. So were the Karnak stones a celestial clock, an earthquake detector, or an army frozen in time? Perhaps they were all of these things, their meaning shifting with the centuries. They stand today as a monument to a lost culture's worldview, a physical manifestation of their connection to the forces of the earth and sky, and a reminder that some stories are so powerful they become written in stone. A world of perfect silence holds a gallery of unfinished journeys. In the heart of Death Valley, on a vast, flat expanse of dried mud called the Racetrack Playa, stones seem to come to life. For decades, these sailing stones, some weighing as much as 700 pounds, have performed a slow, impossible dance, sliding across the desert floor and leaving long, graceful trails etched into the cracked, dry earth. With no human or animal interference, the rocks appeared to move on their own, carving paths that curve, cross, and even reverse direction in the sun-baked clay. The scene was utterly alien, a puzzle laid out under the punishing desert sun that defied every logical explanation. How could heavy rocks travel hundreds of yards seemingly under their own power? The theories were as wild and varied as the trails themselves. Some suggested powerful, localized magnetic fields were pulling the stones. Others whispered about the playful or mischievous spirits of the desert. The most popular speculation pointed to the area's infamous high winds, but that alone could not account for the movement of such massive rocks. Without a witness, the phenomenon remained one of nature's most captivating and elegant secrets. Then, in the winter of 2013, a team of scientists finally caught the movement in action. The solution was a perfect, delicate combination of rare conditions. First, a shallow layer of rainwater must flood the playa, just deep enough to submerge the base of the stones. Then, on a cold winter night, this thin sheet of water must freeze into a vast pane of clear, window-like ice, only a few inches thick. As the sun rises and warms the air, this massive sheet of ice begins to break apart. Driven by a gentle, persistent wind, these floating panels of ice, some as large as dinner tables, push against the stones. The rocks now embedded in these ice rafts become makeshift sailboats gliding effortlessly across the slick, muddy bottom. The movement is almost imperceptibly slow, just a few inches per second, but over hours it carves those long, meandering trails into the soft sediment. Once the ice melts and the water evaporates, all that remains is the evidence of the journey, the mysterious tracks that had baffled observers for so long. The mystery was solved not by complex technology, but by patience and a willingness to stand in the cold desert dawn. Yet, knowing the mechanics does not erase the magic of the site. Those solitary trails remain a ghostly record of a silent, frozen ballet, a reminder that even the most desolate and still places on Earth are alive with subtle, hidden motion. But even the grandest stone circles and most intricate mechanisms cannot compete with the allure of a garden suspended in the sky. Among the fabled 7 wonders of the ancient world, the Hanging Gardens of Babylon stand out for their sheer, impossible beauty, a cascade of lush greenery tumbling down terraced ziggurats in the heart of a desert empire. Yet a haunting question lingers: did this verdant paradise ever truly exist? The primary accounts we rely on were written centuries after its supposed construction. Greek historians like Strabo and Diodorus Siculus described an astonishing feat of engineering, a multi-level structure with vaulted terraces supported by massive stone pillars, housing trees with trunks as thick as columns. They wrote of complex machinery, hidden screws that lifted water from the Euphrates River to the very top, creating a perpetual, life-giving cycle for the plants. The story claims King Nebuchadnezzar II built it in the 6th century BCE to comfort his wife, Ametes, who missed the green, mountainous landscape of her homeland. It is a romantic tale of love and power, a king commanding nature itself to bloom in the dust for his queen. But here is the core of the mystery. No Babylonian text from that era ever mentions such a garden. The extensive records of Nebuchadnezzar's reign detail his palaces, city walls, and other constructions, yet they are completely silent on this, what should have been his most spectacular achievement. This glaring absence has led many scholars to a radical theory. What if the Hanging Gardens were not in Babylon at all? A compelling alternative places them hundreds of miles to the north, in the Assyrian capital of Nineveh. The proposed builder is the Assyrian king Sennacherib, a ruler famous for his own monumental engineering projects. In the 7th century BCE, he created a vast system of canals and aqueducts to bring water to his capital, and his own palace inscriptions boast of a wonderful garden, a replica of a mountainous land, watered by bronze screws and an elaborate network of canals. This technology matches the Greek descriptions perfectly. One inscription even describes a long, high ramp of stone pillars upon which a garden was raised, a paradise of aromatic trees and fruit-bearing plants. It is a description that echoes the later Greek accounts with uncanny precision. Could it be that over centuries, the story of Sennacherib's magnificent garden in Nineveh was transferred by error or by legend to the more famous city of Babylon? If the gardens were real, regardless of their location, their construction would have been an almost supernatural feat. Imagine the water requirements alone. Keeping a vast garden alive in a hot, arid climate would have demanded a constant, massive flow of water, lifted against gravity to staggering heights. The Archimedes screw, the device most often credited, was not formally invented until centuries later, suggesting either an earlier, lost discovery or a different, equally ingenious method. The structural engineering would have been just as daunting. The weight of soil deep enough to support large trees, combined with the constant seepage of water, would have placed immense strain on the building. The Babylonians and Assyrians primarily used mud brick, a material that dissolves when wet. The gardens would have required revolutionary waterproofing, perhaps layers of reeds, tar, and lead sheeting to protect the core of the structure from the very element that gave it life. So we are left with two equally fascinating possibilities. Either a wonder of such sublime beauty was built in Babylon and vanished without a single trace in the archaeological record, leaving only the whispers of foreign historians, or it was a spectacular marvel in another city, its true identity lost to a geographical mix-up over time. The Hanging Gardens remain the only one of the 7 wonders with no confirmed location or physical evidence, a ghost of emerald and stone that continues to challenge our grasp of the ancient world. Far from the deserts and ancient cities, a different kind of vanishing act unfolded in the frozen north. On the western coast of Greenland, two Norse settlements thrived for over 400 years. Their stone and turf churches and farmsteads a testament to European life at the very edge of the known world. These were Viking communities established by Eric the Red around the year 985. They raised sheep and cattle, hunted walrus for their valuable ivory, and traded with their homeland across the sea. For generations, they built a life in a challenging but sustainable environment. Then they simply disappeared. The last written record of them is a marriage certificate from the early 1400s. After that, only silence. When a ship finally arrived from Iceland decades later, the crews found only empty houses, scattered bones, and an unsettling quiet. So what happened to these resilient people? The most significant factor was a dramatic shift in the climate. A period known as the Little Ice Age began to grip the North Atlantic. Summers grew shorter and colder, and the sea ice expanded, choking the shipping lanes. This had a devastating domino effect. The growing season for grass became too short to produce enough hay to feed their livestock through the long winters. Their herds of cattle and sheep, the foundation of their diet and wealth, began to starve. At the same time, the sea ice made it incredibly difficult for trade ships to reach them from Norway and Iceland. This economic isolation was a death sentence. They relied on imports of timber and iron to maintain their ships and tools, and without these vital supplies, they were trapped. Their society began to fray at the edges, but climate and isolation were not the only pressures. The Norse were not alone in Greenland. Another people had also made the island their home, the Thule, the ancestors of the modern Inuit. The Inuit were masters of survival in the Arctic. They built sleek, efficient kayaks and umiaks for hunting in the icy waters, and they knew how to harpoon seals and whales from the shifting sea ice. As the climate worsened, competition for scarce resources like seals and walrus intensified. The Norse, stubbornly clinging to their European identity, refused to adapt. They continued to wear woolen clothing instead of adopting the warmer, more effective sealskin garments of the Inuit. They kept trying to farm like Europeans in a land that was becoming increasingly hostile to that way of life. Archaeological evidence suggests that relations between the two groups were not always hostile. There are finds of Norse artifacts in Inuit sites indicating some trade. But as resources dwindled, conflict seems inevitable. Did the settlements end in a final, violent confrontation? Or did the last Norse Greenlanders, weakened by malnutrition and disease, slowly die out in their cold homes, watching the sea ice close in and knowing that no ship would ever come again? Perhaps a few of the last survivors finally abandoned their pride and tried to integrate with the Inuit, their European heritage dissolving into a new way of life. The empty farms of Greenland stand as a stark lesson in the fragility of even the hardiest societies when faced with a changing world, economic collapse, and an unwillingness to adapt. A desert wind whispers across the Tarim Basin, preserving secrets in the dry, salty earth. In this remote corner of Western China, archaeologists made a discovery that would rewrite the early history of Asia. They unearthed mummies, but these were not the expected ancient Chinese ancestors. These individuals had long noses, fair hair, and deeply Caucasian features, dressed in brilliantly woven woolen textiles and tall felt hats. They had been resting in their boat-shaped coffins for nearly 4,000 years, their features so perfectly preserved that you could still see the intricate tattoos on their skin and the fine lines on their faces. They are known as the Tarim mummies, and their existence poses a profound question. How did people of Western descent come to be living and dying in the heart of the Asian continent so long ago? For decades, the prevailing theory was that these were lone travelers, early Indo-European migrants from the steppes of southern Russia or perhaps Persia, who had ventured east along nascent trade routes. They were seen as visitors, outliers in a land that would later become a crossroads for the Silk Road. However, recent genetic studies have turned that assumption on its head. Advanced DNA analysis reveals that these people were not recent arrivals. They were a long-isolated, deeply rooted population, direct descendants of an ancient group of hunter-gatherers who had moved into the area during the last ice age and stayed, largely unmixed with the populations that would later become modern East Asians. They were not just passing through, the Tarim Basin was their home. This revelation completely reshapes our understanding of ancient migration. It suggests that different human populations with distinct appearances and cultures were living in separate pockets of the world far earlier and in more complex patterns than we ever realized. The Tarim mummies were not lost. They were exactly where they were supposed to be, a thriving, indigenous people who had adapted to one of the harshest environments on Earth. Their culture was a unique fusion. Their physical appearance and the woven patterns on their clothes show clear links to the West, yet their economy was built on the animals of the Asian steppe. They were herders of sheep and cattle, and evidence suggests they even practiced a form of early agriculture, cultivating wheat and millet. Their very presence forces us to challenge the historical narratives of a monolithic ancient China. Here, thousands of years before the official opening of the Silk Road, was a meeting point of worlds. The artifacts buried with them tell a story of astonishing cultural exchange. One famous mummy, known as the Beauty of Lulan, was buried with a winnowing basket, a tool for processing grain, hinting at agricultural knowledge that may have traveled across continents. Another, the Churchen Man, was found with 10 hats, each of a different style, suggesting a society with a sense of fashion and perhaps even social status. These were not primitive nomads. They were a sophisticated people who had developed a unique identity at the crossroads of two great human streams. So what became of them? Their story does not have a clear, dramatic end. The prevailing theory is one of absorption, not extinction. As trade routes solidified into the Silk Road, the Tarim Basin became a true melting pot. Later waves of migrants from the east with new technologies, languages, and customs likely intermarried with this ancient population. Over centuries, their distinct genetic signature slowly blended into the wider tapestry of Central Asian peoples. Their physical legacy faded, but their cultural and technological contributions, from weaving techniques to agricultural practices, likely flowed in both directions along the trade routes they helped pioneer. The mummies, then, are not ghosts of a failed people. They are a silent testament to a much deeper, more ancient connection between East and West, a forgotten chapter that reminds us the map of human history was always far more colorful and interconnected than we once believed. High in the Andes, another stone puzzle defies the centuries. The fortress of Sacsayhuaman looms over the ancient Inca capital of Cusco, a sprawling complex of ramps and terraces crowned by walls of staggering might. These are not mere piles of rock. They are zigzagging ramparts built from colossal limestone boulders, some weighing over 100 tons, each one cut and fitted to its neighbors with a precision that seems impossible. The joints between these giant blocks are so tight, so seamless, that you cannot slip a single piece of paper between them. This is dry stone construction at its most masterful, achieved without a single drop of mortar, without iron tools, and without the wheel. How did the Inca accomplish this feat of engineering on such an immense scale? The mystery begins in the quarries where these gigantic stones were wrested from the living earth. The Inca used harder stones as hammers, patiently pounding along natural fracture lines to isolate a single block. They also employed thermal shock, building fires against the rock face and then dousing it with cold water, causing the stone to crack and split. But freeing the stone was only the first challenge. The next was moving it. Without beasts of burden stronger than the llama, the transport of these 100-ton monoliths remains a profound enigma. The most accepted theory involves an army of laborers using ropes, levers, and log rollers. They would have inched these stones along earthen ramps, a process of monumental effort and coordination that could have taken months for a single block to travel from the quarry to the building site. Once there, the most perplexing phase began, the shaping. How were these irregular boulders transformed into puzzle pieces that locked together with such perfection? One enduring theory suggests the use of a simple yet brilliant technique. The masons may have repeatedly lifted a new block and lowered it onto the one already in place, using a gritty sand slurry as an abrasive. By rocking the stone back and forth, they would slowly grind the two surfaces together, creating that famous paper-thin fit. This method would have been incredibly laborious and time-consuming, but it would explain the complex, interlocking joints that give the walls their legendary strength, allowing them to withstand the violent earthquakes that frequently shake the Andes. This practical explanation, however, does not satisfy everyone. The sheer perfection of the fit has led to more speculative ideas involving a lost technology. Some propose the Inca possessed a plant-based solvent, a mysterious liquid that could temporarily soften the hard stone, allowing artisans to mold it like clay before it hardened again. Others, looking at the surfaces that seem almost vitrified, as if melted, suggest the use of concentrated sunlight with massive mirrors or lenses, an application of solar power on a scale we can barely conceive. While these theories are captivating, they lack any archaeological evidence. The true secret of Sacsayhuaman may not be a single lost technique, but something even more powerful, a societal secret. It was the Incas' unparalleled ability to organize and motivate their people. This was not the work of slaves, but of communal labor, a duty known as mita, where thousands of skilled workers contributed their time as a form of tax. This collective effort, guided by generations of accumulated knowledge, turned an impossible task into a lasting monument. The walls were not just a fortress, they were a statement of imperial power and unity, a declaration that a society working together could make the very mountains bow to their will. Scattered across the rolling hills of northern Laos, a different kind of stone army stands in silent formation. This is the Plain of Jars, a vast archaeological zone where thousands of massive stone vessels, some weighing several tons, dot the landscape in clusters of a few to several hundred. Carved from sandstone and granite, these jars rise from the earth like silent, open mouths, their original lids often lying nearby. Their sheer number and size are staggering, with the largest known jar standing over 3 meters tall. Who created this field of stone giants, and what was its solemn purpose? The most widely accepted theory points to an ancient funerary practice. Archaeologists believe the jars were used as burial urns, holding the decomposing remains of the dead. Once the body had decayed, the bones would be collected and buried elsewhere, a form of excarnation practiced by a lost Iron Age culture between 500 BCE and 500 CE. Evidence from recent excavations supports this, with human remains, burial goods like beads and ceramics, and quartz stones scattered around the jars, possibly part of a complex death ritual. Local legend, however, tells a more epic story. Folklore speaks of a race of ancient giants who once inhabited the region. A powerful king named Kun Cheung, after a great military victory, supposedly ordered the creation of these enormous jars to brew and store vast quantities of celebratory rice liquor. The legend transforms an eerie burial ground into the site of a mythical, colossal feast, a story passed down through generations to explain the inexplicable. Unraveling the truth is a dangerous endeavor. The Plain of Jars lies in a region heavily bombed during the Vietnam War, and the area remains littered with unexploded ordnance. This tragic legacy from the 20th century has ironically helped preserve the ancient mystery, limiting archaeological access for decades. Today, dedicated teams work carefully alongside bomb disposal experts to clear sites for study, slowly piecing together the story of the jar makers. They have discovered that the jars were not quarried on site. The stone was sourced from mountains several kilometers away, and the jars were likely carved there before being transported, a logistical puzzle as profound as the jars themselves. The culture that created them left no written records, and their identity remains shrouded in time. Each jar is a silent vessel holding a dual history, an ancient secret of death and ritual forever, intertwined with the more recent scars of conflict, waiting patiently in the Laotian highlands for its full story to be told. A book exists so large that it is said to have required the devil himself to help write it. The Codex Gigas, more famously known as the Devil's Bible, is a massive medieval manuscript weighing nearly 165 pounds. Its creation in a Bohemian monastery during the early 13th century is shrouded in a chilling legend. The story tells of a monk who broke his sacred vows and was sentenced to be walled up alive. To avoid this terrible fate, he promised to write the entire known world's knowledge in a single night. As midnight approached, he realized the task was impossible and prayed not to God, but to the fallen angel Lucifer, offering his soul in exchange for completion. The devil is said to have finished the book, adding his own portrait as a signature. This is why, on one of its vellum pages, you find a haunting, full-page illustration of the devil. He is depicted alone in a stark white landscape, a crouching, monstrous figure with claws, green skin, and a blank, unsettling stare. This single image has cast a long shadow over the entire book, branding it with an ominous reputation for centuries. But the reality of the Codex is as fascinating as the myth. It is a complete library bound into a single volume, containing the entire Latin Vulgate Bible, historical chronicles, medical texts, and spells for exorcism. The most compelling evidence against the supernatural legend lies in the handwriting. Modern analysis confirms the entire text was written by a single scribe, a feat of almost inhuman dedication. The consistency of the script suggests it was the work of one person over perhaps 20 or 30 years, not a single, frantic night. Yet the sheer physical effort involved is staggering. Imagine the countless hours of grinding ink, preparing the skins of over 160 donkeys for parchment, and the meticulous, unbroken focus required to fill every page without a single noticeable error or change in style. The monk who undertook this monumental task must have dedicated his entire life to this one creation, a penance or an offering of a different kind. The book's history is as turbulent as its myth. It was taken as a war trophy by the Swedish army in 1648 during the 30 Years' War and has remained in Stockholm's National Library ever since. For many years, the manuscript was kept locked away, not out of fear of its diabolical image, but because the legend made it a target for thieves and vandals. Some believed a page was mysteriously missing, torn out to conceal forbidden knowledge or powerful spells. In truth, several pages were removed long ago, likely containing the monastery's rules, a common practice for recycled parchment. The Codex Gigas stands as a monument to human endurance and obsession. It forces us to wonder what would drive a person to such an extreme act of creation, and why we are so quick to attribute such immense, solitary labor to a supernatural force. Is the legend a way to explain the unexplainable dedication of one man, a story we crafted because the truth of his sacrifice is simply too profound to comprehend? The devil on the page may be a myth, but the silent, enduring will of the scribe is the real, and perhaps even more powerful, mystery. These whispers from the past, from lost cities and walking statues, remind us that history is not a sealed book but a living conversation. Each mystery we have explored is a testament to the vast, uncharted territory of our own story, a silent question mark etched in stone, vellum, or sand. They prove that for every answer we uncover, a dozen new riddles emerge from the shadows, challenging what we think we know. This endless quest for understanding is a fundamental part of being human, a drive to find our place in the long, winding river of time. We are all detectives of the ages, piecing together fragments of a puzzle that may never be fully complete. Now we turn the question over to you. Which of these ancient secrets captured your imagination the most, and what other historical enigmas keep you wondering late into the night? Share your favorite mysteries in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this whispered journey, be sure to subscribe for more tales from the sleepy corners of history.